Thank you very much, Graham. And good morning, everybody. Firstly, just thanks for Graham and Kath and the team here for inviting me to speak today. I was very privileged to have sort of seen the early stages of the development of the centre here, as I was part of the Revenue Steering Group Committee here. So it's great to sort of see that it's come this far in such a short time. So firstly, I'm going to introduce myself. I'm going to walk around. I've got this problem, I can't stand still and talk at the same time. So if I start wandering, apologies. I'm going to introduce myself. You may have seen me before in my Leatherhead days. I left Leatherhead in January of this year and have established my own organisation focusing on food innovation and food innovation management. So who are we? Just to give you a brief introduction, we're a new organisation, so apologies for this. I've just realised that the cameraman's going to hate me walking around. We're a relatively new organisation, so apologies for the introduction. We brought together 4 decades. That sounds terrible, doesn't it? It makes me sound really old, but it is a combination of myself and my wife, Naomi. We brought together 4 decades of food and drink industry expertise, business process expertise, project management, innovation management skills, generic food science and technology. And during all of our time in industry, we've been providing frontline consultancy across major industry sectors and significantly the food and drink sector during that time. And we feel that sort of with a combination of these skills through organisations as Northern Foods and Nestlé and Leatherhead and Saint-Gobain and Ernst & Young Boots, we've got a strong proposition for the food and drink industry. And what we're all about is about creating excellence in the food and drink industry, and that's through providing international consultancy, providing expert technical advice, identifying innovation opportunities, providing technology solutions, open innovation network development, and technology scouting, which we do through our Action platform. And some of you may well have seen some of the technology scouting activity we've been in. So that's sort of a little bit less of the introductions of the company. It's myself and my wife, Naomi. Naomi looks after more of the sort of strategic and innovation side, and I focus on the food and drink side. So the discussion today was about staying ahead of the technology innovation curve. We work in a great industry. Food and drink it's a fantastic place to be, which is why I've stayed in it. And it changes, it constantly changes, which is a fantastic opportunity for us as scientists and technologists and developers. And food changes all the time. If you go back 50 years to the generation of our parents and think about the food and the food science and the food technology that shaped the food in the marketplace at the time, and how that changed to 30 years ago, to when Marty McFly and what he was eating 30 years ago, to 20 years ago when OB and Max and Mandy and what food they were eating when Hollyoaks started not that far up the road, 20 years ago this week. We're very privileged to be at the University of Chester on the 20th anniversary of Hollyoaks starting, I think. So I'm really pleased to be here. But what were they eating 20 years ago? And when you look at that change that's happened in that time, what are we going to be eating in 20 years' time, in 30 years' time, and in 50 years' time? And how's technology and innovation going to shape that change? What we do know about food is it's fraught with paradox. You look at the clean label challenges and the natural challenges. The consumer wants clean label products. They want natural products. They want us to take additives out of products. They want us to take preservatives away. They also want those products to last more than a week. So how are we dealing with that technologically? How are we providing those clean label and natural foods that are also additive free? You think about how the population is buying food. They're wasting 25% of the food that they buy straight away. 25% of it goes in the bin. The next 25%, from a calorific term, people don't need. We're getting fat, but we're still eating 25% more food than we need. So we're buying more food than we need. Meanwhile, the world's population's increasing, and yet we're wasting so much food. Another paradox that we've got to deal with as scientists, as food scientists. So this is going to shape the future of food, and we need to respond to that. So it provides us opportunities, and there are solutions out there, and when we need to address those solutions. And the way that we do this is by looking at market trends, for example. It's come to that time of year, it's that season, isn't it, where all of the predictions for 2016, all of the consumer trends for 2016 are starting to come out. I think Mintel launched theirs this week, which is great. Innova will follow. I think Leatherhead will usually do one. Zenith come out. And there's a whole raft of these. And that's setting the consumer trends. Now, we as scientists and producers, we need to respond to those. There's food safety trends. You know, we follow those through FSA and then the rapid response. But there's also technology trends. And we need to follow those technology trends because that can help us define how we're going to make those changes in the future and how we're going to meet those market trends demands. And you might recognise there the Black & Decker pizza rehydrator from Back to the Future too. And I think the quote is that Marty McFly says, his mum rehydrates pizza better than anybody. So, all right, maybe 30 years ago, maybe that was a little bit ambitious. But the way that consumers use technology and their expectation of technology in their food also changes. One of the things that Back to the Future might not have realised is that 30 years ago, we haven't gone down this ultra-convenience route. We've actually gone back to basics a little bit. We got rid of our microwave about a month ago. We just didn't use it because we were cooking food, heaven forbid. So I don't know how typical we are in that respect, but we actually got rid of our microwave and it's now gathering dust in the garage, and we don't miss it. So we're moving away from some of these technology trends, and you need to start thinking about consumer perceptions and some of the technology that is going to change the future of the food that we're making. From an industrial perspective, you need to adopt new technology. You need to bring this technology on board in a positive manner. So there's a realisation that you're going to use technology in your food. You're going to use, and when I say technology here, I'm thinking of processing, I'm thinking of ingredients, I'm thinking of additives, different functionality of ingredients, different way of presenting ingredients. We're going to hear from Kathy and Craig later this morning about nanotechnology. It may be presenting the same ingredient in a different way. So we as producers need to consider and realise that we need to go down that route. And that might need to be a culture change in the business. It might need to change people's perceptions of what our products are and how you're going to manage that. So you're going to need to plan for that eventuality. You're going to need to think about how you're going to bring this technology on board, what changes it's going to make, how it's going to impact your business, and you need to plan for that. It might be about technology scouting. It might be about going out there to find that next generation of technology that is going to solve the problems and the consumer trends that you're trying to follow. When I was at Leatherhead a few years ago, we did a piece of research for the BRC and the FDF about salt reduction. And one of the things that piece of research found, it said, as far as salt reduction goes in the current landscape, as an industry, we've done what we can do knowing what we know. We're going to need new technology to make that next generation of salt reduction. So as we're going to need healthier foods, we're going to need to reduce salt, we're going to need to reduce sugar, we're going to need to reduce fat, we're going to need to reduce whatever's coming next, and something will come next. We're going to need to adopt new technologies to achieve this. So there's a scouting activity as businesses we need to do to make sure that we're keeping sight of what the opportunities are to achieve that. It's going to take collaboration. You know, Graham laid out some of the objectives of the centre here about bringing businesses together. These things can't be done in isolation, and that collaboration is really important to bring the right people together in the right way to help you achieve those solutions. As with all innovation, there's a huge filtering activity. There's so much out there, so many fantastical things, and there's also a lot of rubbish. And you need to filter that out to make sure that you're actually identifying the right thing, the right solution in the right way. And then there's a process of adopting that technology into your business. So it's a process. And that's what innovation is as a whole. It's a process. And it's a process that adds value. And that's a really important distinction to make about the adding value, because that distinguishes innovation from invention. You can invent something, but it might be silly. Innovation adds value, makes it different from creativity, separates it from ideation. And because you're adding value, it accounts for the successful adoption of the technology. And it accounts for the rate of adoption as well. And it implies completion and delivery, and that's really important. You can have some great ideas, you can have some great thoughts, but without actually completing it and delivering it and gaining value from it at the end of the day, it's completely useless, as are a lot of inventions. So because it's a process, because it requires completion and delivery, it needs process and it needs management. And that always surprises people when, you know, you're talking about innovation and wonderful ideas, and the first thing you say is innovation, it needs process and management, because it seems to be the complete antithesis of what innovation is. But it's true. To get the value out of innovation, you need to approach it systematically in a process-driven way. So we've all seen these. I'm not going to labour stage and gate project management systems, but it's what you need for successful innovation. You have a strategy, you have an idea, you screen and evaluate those ideas, you compare that to your business case, the business analysis, you design and develop it a bit further, you test it and you launch it. It's great. It's as simple as that. But there are critical success factors. You need commitment. You need commitment from your whole organisation. This isn't something that needs to sit in isolation in the MPD team or in the R&D team. It's about committing to this as a business. The business strategy needs to recognise that new things are going to come into the business and you're going to adopt them and deliver them. It needs ownership. You need people to take them forward. You need a good project management system that's going to help develop those innovations and deliver that value. Cooperation, you know, this is again about this collaboration piece. It's about bringing the right people on board. It needs to be meaningful. To add value, it's got to be meaningful. It's got to be adaptable throughout your whole process. You can't go on a single vision, a tunnel vision route for your innovation. And you need to communicate it throughout your business. You need to know that everybody's on board and that everybody's talking about it in the same way. You're going to need a degree of portfolio management because you've got other projects on the go. And you're going to need to prioritise your projects within that. So, you know, it's a top-down approach. You've got your business strategy, you've got a portfolio management structure, and then you've got your innovation management stage and gate system, for example. So you need processes in place to achieve what you want to achieve. So this is a slide I actually changed depending on the demographic of the audience. If it's a younger audience, and I've delivered similar ones to students, I put Andrew Lincoln from Waking the Dead up there as well because they connect more with that zombie killing. But I figured that it might be a slightly older audience here, so the Shaun of the Dead guys would be slightly more appropriate. But it's an important message. Fail fast, fail often, fail cheap. You need to evaluate projects with the wider strategy. Are they going to deliver that value that's in line with the company strategy? You know, define what those parameters are so you can measure that value. You know, employ objective measures if you like, if that's important. But at the end of the day, kill the zombies. Innovation is about adding value, and if you're going to labour over projects that aren't going to add value, kill them quickly. And that's a positive thing to take. It's really hard for people to kill off projects because you're personally associated with them. But actually, it's a positive business tactic, a positive business move to kill those zombies, those dead projects, quickly, so you don't waste any more time. You can then start focusing on projects that actually do add value. So whether you're younger and it's Andrew Lincoln killing your zombies, if you're older and it's the Shaun of the Dead guys, and it doesn't matter, but just kill them soon. One of the strategies that you're going to employ or potentially employ in terms of process management of innovation is road mapping. And what road mapping tries to do is envisage the future. Now, we know that Marty McFly got it horribly wrong about yesterday. You know, there's so many, I mean, I've still not got my hoverboard, I don't know about you guys. But you've got to try some way of predicting the future. And one of my favourite project management teams are these guys. Does anybody know who these guys are? My children are 10 and 7, so we're just past this phase now. But this is the family from going on a bear hunt. And they project plan really well, I always think, because they make a statement of where they are, they make a statement of where they're going, they make a view of what obstacles are going to lie ahead, and they make a decision about what they're going to do about them. Because they're going on a bear hunt, they're going to catch a big one. It's a beautiful day. We're not scared. But there's grass, there's long wavy grass. How do we get around it? Because you can't go over it and under it. So they make that judgment of this journey that they're going on. So I always like to think of them as a good project management team. So what does road mapping do? Well, it's going to integrate your stakeholders. And your stakeholders might be other people in the business, external customers, suppliers, users. It's going to align your project to the business goal, which is really important, because if you don't know what your business goal is, you don't know what your strategy is, you're not going to add value. Sets the trend, considers the trends and drivers, sets the time horizons, and it communicates the MPD strategy throughout the business. This isn't an MPD team sat in a kitchen at the far end of the factory. This is a team that's communicating what they're trying to achieve and getting the response from the business back into it. So part of that is actually using things like SWOT analyses. And I know we've all done SWOT analyses because they're in the drawer down here at the bottom somewhere, but it's about actually using them for some value as part of your future envisioning strategy. And you can create a living and shared document. You can create a document that everybody's going to invest in, everybody recognises, everybody believes in, and everybody has sight of. So you're going to be looking to the future. You're going to be looking at what the opportunities and threats to achieving those business goals are. And you might do this through steep factors, for example, or PESTLE, if you like, whichever is your preferred. But it's a way of sitting down and saying, what is in the environment that is going to change potentially in the future? And these might be the usual social, technological, environmental, economic, political, or legislative if you've gone down the PESTLE route. So it's about sitting down and taking a measured judgment of what factors are going to affect your business going forward, and particularly the project that you're involved in. And this might be coming from left field, if you like. The environmental issues. I heard quite an interesting one this morning about pesto, that the use of pine nuts in pesto is having severe impact on pine forests. So you go, well, actually, what's that going to do to the price of pine nuts, and where else are we using pine nuts, and what should we be looking for as an alternative? And considering such left field considerations. Guar gum is used in the fracking industry, so is that going to have an impact on guar in the future for the food industry if fracking becomes a thing? Thinking about some of these bigger issues and the ingredients that you're putting into your products can help you plan for the future and help you get around some of those issues. And then it's about identifying the right people, internally and externally, who are going to help you on this journey. It's important to consider your current state. So what are your strengths and weaknesses in the marketplace? You might want to create a systems map identifying all of the right people who are currently involved in your organisation and who might need to be involved in the organisation and involved in the particular project. And I always hate people in presentations who say, you probably can't read this, because if you can't read it, why did you put it up on a slide? So apologies for the fact you can't read this. But it was just as a visual impact to say, look, create your space. And what we've got in the middle here, you've got little groups of people, of lab people, you've got your product development people, your application people inside your own organisation. Your external organisation might be academics, external consultants, independent experts, research centres, a whole raft of people. But identify those people who are involved in your project and who else you need to be involved in those projects. And that will help you build this collaborative virtual organisation that is going to help you on that journey to deliver that technology and innovation. Ancient Africans were really into open innovation, apparently. They had a proverb: if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And that's true. It's about collaboration. It's about getting the right people involved at the right time. Recognising that you don't know everything yourself, and there are experts out there who can provide a positive input into your project. And this brings us on to open innovation in more detail. It's about combining internal and external ideas, as well as internal and external paths to market to advance the development of new technologies. So said Henry Cheeseborough. So It's true, though. You'll look at external, outside the organisation, neighbouring planets, if you like, to get inspiration about where to get solutions from. And it's a positive and an effective mechanism for developing new technology. But you've got to take care. Open innovation isn't a simple tool. Open innovation is a complex adaptive system. You've got a lot of people with a lot of different agendas, and it's going to change all the time. So it needs managing. You can't just claim that you're part of an open innovation network or your products are developed on open innovation unless you're managing that network effectively. The network's going to respond to the need of a project. You're going to bring people in and out of that project as you need to provide the opportunities. We know if they've got opportunities, if they've got solutions, you're going to bring them into that organisation. And think about what those interactions are. Typically, you might define them as being inside out or outside in. So it might be the inside out approach. You say, we have a problem, we need a solution, and open that problem out to the marketplace and invite solutions in. It might be that you've got the solution and you're saying, we've got a technology here, we believe it's got applications in salt reduction, providing that from the outside to find the right customer who can adopt it. And be careful, because open innovation, it's a buzzword, it's been talked about a lot over the last 5 years, me included, but it's not simply outsourcing or subcontracting. I'm aware of an organisation who has a whole open innovation department, but invest many tens of thousands of pounds, and actually all they do is outsource it and subcontract it to external organisations to tick the open innovation box. It isn't simply that, or it's not simply being part of a consortium. It's a complex adaptive system that needs managing. So what's this output, this roadmap that we talked about? What is it? It's a future plan. It is a map saying, this is our horizon of 2 years or 5 years. This is what we expect to see along the way. We're going to see political change. What's going to be the impact if we do come out of Europe? What impact's that going to have on the funding structure, for example? How are we going to adapt to that change in the future? You need to think about these things at the start of the process, just so you're prepared for them in the eventuality. If in 5 years' time you're relying on European funding to develop a product, yet we come out of Europe in that time, where is that money going to come from and who might be able to help you? And identify those people in 5 years' time you might need to connect with to provide alternative funding. That roadmap is going to represent collaborative thinking. It's going to have a sight of all the people who are involved and all the challenges that are going to happen and who's going to help you solve those problems along the way. It's going to account for the internal and external environment. It's going to account for that change. And it's going to consider the full journey from start to finish. So you can say, well, this is where we start. We want to produce a salt-reduced product, a sugar-reduced product, a healthier product. This is the journey we're going to go on. This is our end point. And these are the hurdles we think we'll find along the way. And we've also thought about how we're going to solve them. And that allows you to communicate that throughout the business from that medium to long-term view to all of your stakeholders, to the board, to the other parts of the factory, so they know that maybe in a year's time you're going to want to introduce a new product that is going to need new processes and new systems in place. You're communicating that throughout the business and to all of the stakeholders. And then it's about providing a living document. So it's going to change, but everybody's got sight of it and they're aware of those changes. And it's part of a good project management philosophy. But all that sounds like really hard work, and it sounds like there's a lot going on and a lot to think about and a lot of effort to go into it when we could just be making new products. So why would we bother going to do this? Well, some stats, we love a few stats. For every 14 product ideas, only 8 enter development. That's great, because 6 of them were silly ideas anyway. That's fine. But only 3 of those 8 are launched, and only 2 of them succeed. So you kind of go, well, that's not a great strike rate, really. And then when you start looking at some of the sort of the financial implications of that 46% of all NPD activity is wasted on products that fail commercially. So as product developers, who's a product developer in any way, shape or form? Ah, Lindsay, fantastic. So half of Lindsay's effort before she even starts is wasted, a complete and utter waste of time. On a Monday morning, she wakes up knowing that half the effort is going to be wasted. But there's a positive side to it. And actually, that doesn't apply to Lindsay because half her effort isn't wasted because she's got great systems in place to make sure that those failures don't happen. Because organisations who have got good MPD, good innovation and project management systems do achieve higher strike rates. 32% higher strike rates, and they're 40% more likely to meet revenue and profit targets. So there's a positive reason to take that time at the outset to put the right systems in place, identify the journey you're going to be on, and that's going to help you implement the right technology that meets the right trends at the right time. But why now? Why do we need to do it now more than ever? Well, the millennials, they're a problem because they've got much wider taste. It's this global village phenomenon. They've got wider taste and they're less brand loyal. So they're not being brought up with major brands and saying, I'm always sticking to that. They're chopping and changing. Excuse me. They're chopping and changing a lot. We've got this rising population, 9 billion by 2050. It's a huge rate of increase. So the needs of that population are going to change. They're going to change. They're going to be varied. We've got increasing demand on resource. With this rising population, water scarcity, pine nut scarcity, guar gum scarcity, there's a greater demand on resource. So we need to forecast what those changes are going to be and develop the technology and the solutions to deal with it. We're also having to deal with these paradoxes. Saw Captain Yossarian earlier on. Technology is great, but how are the consumers going to react to that? I'm sure Kathy will ask you the question later, but is nano sugar natural or not? Because, well, it's just sugar, isn't it? It'll be declared on an ingredient label, thank you. It'll be declared on an ingredient label as sugar, but is it sugar? Because it's been manipulated in such a way that changes its functionality. Excuse me. So how are we going to deal with those paradoxes with this increasing population? You look at genetically modified food. We're starting to ask different questions than we asked 20 years ago because of this rising population. Is GM going to solve hunger crisis with these greater levels of population? We need to answer these questions, and that's why it's important to introduce new technology, but think about how we're going to do it. We've got a better understanding of nutrition. Marty McFly was reducing, or his girlfriend was reducing fat in her diet 30 years ago. You don't want to do that now, do you? Because it's all about sugar. So you need to think about what we know about nutrition. What are we going to know about nutrition in a few years' time? And how are we going to balance that out? We made some mistakes with fat 30 years ago. Are we in danger of making the same mistake with sugar now if we're going to start demonising a single ingredient again? So this demand for healthier products is all very well, but it's not necessarily achievable knowing what we know now. We're going to need new technology to achieve that. But then how does the consumer deal with the fact that we've put Frankenstein food in their products that isn't necessarily sitting easy with their ideals of what food should look like? So they want lower salt, they want lower sugar, they want lower fat. We as scientists, we've got the solutions for those, but are the consumers going to accept it? And how are you going to balance that out? And then the other part of why now is this industrial revolution. Yes, we're in part of an industrial revolution. You might not realise this unless you heard Jake speaking yesterday, but we're on this cusp of something new in food manufacturing, in industrial manufacturing across the world. If you go back to the first industrial revolution when we started using water and wind, you know, a long time ago, then we started with the division of labour, meat packing lines in Cincinnati, Model T Ford being made. You know, something new came along for a second industrial revolution. In the 50s, we saw the introduction of PLC controls, and that was great. That allowed us to make big machines that could run very fast and control themselves. But we've got something new. We've got this interconnectivity of cyber and physical systems, dynamic feedback loop, this Internet of Things, that if you apply it to food manufacturing, it's going to change what we do and how we do it. So how are we going to adopt that technology into our food factories of today? How are we going to adopt this? How are we going to make the most of it to achieve what the consumer wants? What's food manufacturing 4.0 going to offer? Potentially bringing us back to batch. That's a scary thought for the food industry, isn't it? I mean, we've been turning on machines for the last 50 years and turning them on Monday morning at great speed until Friday night and turning them off again, making the same thing, making the same homogeneous thing. One of the trends I heard about for the coming years the other day was about imperfection. Consumers are wanting things to be less perfect than they wanted before. Kids are buying vinyl because it sounds scratchy. There's a restaurant somewhere that's dropping cheesecakes to give them kind of like a splattered look. In Japan, there's trends where people are deliberately having teeth chipped because they don't want the perfect smile anymore. Consumer trends are changing. So can we adopt that degree of imperfection with the manufacturing process we've got currently? Maybe not. Maybe we need something different. Maybe batch processing is the way to do it. Maybe if you've got the right robotics and you've got the right intercommunicative tools at your hand through the internet and through Wi-Fi and these sorts of technologies, maybe we can achieve that variability that the consumer wants. You're going to hear from Mani later, who's going to talk about genetics, and that's really exciting. Sure, she's not. She has done in the past, but not today. Ignore me. But in the past, you know, I've heard Mani talk about genetics and the opportunity to tailor nutrition and how we've all got our own genetic profile and we've all got our own nutritional needs and how you might tailor food products to achieve that nutrition. Fascinating area. I'm sure she'll talk to you at length about it in the break, though. So we're, you know, potentially going to lights-off factories that can deliver batch processing and all the flexibility that batch can offer and meeting consumer demands. Modular systems, so you can change, you can tailor products to nutritional needs. Maybe more localised production. Reducing food miles, that sounds quite exciting, really. That's what we're all hung up on about, isn't it? About reducing food miles. If we can have smaller modular factories closer to home, then we can deliver maybe more local and seasonal ingredients. So these are going to be flexible, intelligent systems with real-time capability and optimising process, which might reduce the number of additives, enhance the nutrition, reduce the waste, ultra yield. We all accept a certain degree of waste, but actually, if you can eliminate waste almost entirely, then that's got to be a good thing. The population's rising, we've got to stop wasting food. So there are a lot of opportunities for food and drink innovation and introducing new technology. And it's not an easy journey, but if you plan for it carefully, you can achieve it. Thank you all for your time. Graham stood up, so I've obviously been a little bit of a naughty boy. You can connect with me through all the usual means. I am on Twitter, just below Katy Perry and Lady Gaga, and just ahead of Justin Bieber. So please do come and find me, and if you've got any questions, feel free to shout.
Questions, please. And if you could just wait till the microphone reaches you. We've got one over the back here.
Hi, Steve. I think what I've heard during the talk is that we basically need to, in the developed countries anyway, innovation. By doing that, do you then see the need to have a different set of management structures or management systems in place to help us with that new innovation? If we work on the basis that we can't solve today's problems by using the same systems that got us into them?
Yes, I think needs to be an acceptance of change, and that's about that culture change to say, as a business, we need to adopt these and recognise that innovation needs to be part of a corporate strategy and that it's engaged. So often companies I've worked for or with, the MPD team almost sit in some sort of isolation and investment in new technologies is frowned upon, and that's because it's not seen as being strategically significant, and it needs to come from the top. It needs to come from the top in an engaged manner and communicated and agreed throughout the organisation. And I think there does need to be a culture change to accept those new processes and new technologies.
I think part of that culture should be also to embrace the chance of taking risk.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's not necessarily about just achieving an innovation goal. It's about going down a road and opening up an environment where serendipitous discovery can take place,
yeah,
which
absolutely.
may actually be more valuable than the goal itself.
I think risk is inherent within true innovation, and it needs to be embraced. I think innovation is a contact sport, and it's a risky sport. It doesn't have to be an adrenaline sport. It doesn't, but there needs to be a good degree of risk, and we need to shout about it as well. That we need to tackle these paradoxes head on, because the consumers need to accept that if they want products of even lower salt, we need to do something new, and if that's nano salt, then they need to accept the fact that their food has been manipulated. You can't just take sugar out of products because it contributes so much. So how are we going to achieve that and maintain the clean label agenda? So culturally, from a business point of view, from an industry point of view, yes, I think we need to change, and the consumers need to be brought on that change, and we need to be open and honest about that.
Okay, I think that's a good point to now perhaps move on to Cathy Krause. I'd just like to say again, thank you very much to Steve, our